Alright, so I had a request to talk about congruency of triangles, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about that. The first thing that probably should be noted is, what does it mean for something to be congruent? And I'm going to start this video out. If I have to make multiple videos on this topic, that's fine, but I want to start with the basics. So congruent roughly means the same. It roughly means same. So if we were to say two triangles are congruent, which we can denote mathematically with our symbols like this, it's an equal sign with a little squiggly above it. That means congruent. So if we want to say two triangles are congruent, we could write it out like we see here. This triangle means we're talking about the triangle. And then if we say triangle ABC, ABC, the triangle from those 3 points, is congruent with triangle DEF, DEF. So that's what that's saying. It's congruent, and we know congruent means that they're the same. Now, what we mean by same is, it's pretty obvious to see they're congruent in this example because they're side by side, but they don't have to necessarily look just like that to be congruent. If I were to take this blue triangle over here and I were to rotate it maybe this way, and then maybe after I rotated it I shifted it up, and maybe, I don't know, maybe it looks something more like this. Maybe it looks something like this, or we could say boom, 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 right? And then what would we say? We would say this is 2 angle, right? And then let's see, this one would be 1, 2, 3, and then this one would be 1. So you could see it's essentially rotated. That's still a congruent triangle. I know it's an ugly triangle, but this triangle that I just drew after I rotated it and moved it over here, it's still congruent to ABC. And we'll talk more about different types of triangles, side, angle, side, 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 that sort of thing. And we can determine, based on if certain factors of the triangle are congruent, if the triangle itself is congruent. So let's just look at these two triangles, for example, and let's state which part is congruent with the other part. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense on what we're going to do. We're going to break this triangle into different parts, and we're going to say, okay, this part of the triangle is congruent, this angle is congruent, this side is congruent, that sort of thing. And the idea is, once you kind of see what we're doing, you kind of know you kind of see what it means for something to be congruent. And then after that, we can start testing to see, well, based on the fact that these angles are congruent and this side is congruent, does that make the whole triangle congruent? So let's just look at the sides. So I'm going to run low on colors. Let's just do, well, the thing's black, but I think it'll work. Let's do sides. So this side, that's a bad color. That covers a lot of stuff. Let's do, I don't know, green. This side is congruent with this side, which is also congruent to this side. And the way we know that is because they both have the 3 lines through them. So the way we would write this out is A, B line segment is congruent, that should be a squiggly line, it works, is congruent to DF, right? To DF. So hopefully that part makes sense. There's more sides though. We could say the line segment from CB, so let's see. The line segment CB is congruent to what? FE, right? Right over here. FE. So that is congruent to FE. And then lastly, from BA, that's congruent with ED. So BA is congruent with ED. Now, Now, quick point to make. I could also say, instead of BA, I could also say the line segment AB, because it's ultimately going to be the same line segment. But if I were to do that, I have to switch from ED to DE. Okay? Instead of going ED, I would have to say DE and AB. Basically, those are going to be flipped. Now, we can also do something similar with the angles. So let's see. The way we denote angles, there's a few ways we can do it. But the important, I'm sure you know this, but I'm going to go ahead and review it. If I want to talk about this angle here, the important thing, I'm going to use all 3 points, but the important thing is the vertex is going to be the middle term. So when I say vertex, I mean this point. So I could say BAC, and the way I denote an angle is I actually just make a little angle, basically. And I can say BA, the A should be in the middle, C, we can say that is congruent. I could also say, by the way, CAB. That's okay too. But because I'm saying angle BAC, that's congruent with angle EDF. So ED is our vertex F. Right? So this part right here is the part that needs to be in the middle. And we could keep doing this. Another way is the fact that this has one line from visually and this has one line. That's implying that those are congruent. Likewise, if I want to look at another line, because this one has 2 and this one has 2, that's the picture's way of saying those angles are the same measurement. And I would denote that mathematically by saying, okay, so I'm talking about this angle and this angle. I could say ACB, angle ACB, right? The C's in the middle, is congruent to angle, well, the F's in the middle, so I could say DFE, DFE, F is in the middle. And let's see, there's another triangle we could look at over here. Or not a triangle, angle that has 3. This one has 3. So the way we would say that's congruent, well, let's see, we're talking about this, we're talking about this. I could say CBA, angle CBA is congruent to angle, we're talking about this one, so FED, FED, okay? Hopefully that makes sense what we're doing. There's more to this topic with side, angle, that sort of thing. And based on, okay, so let's just talk about it real quick. I want to just explain what congruent meant, and if we're looking at triangles, what it meant. But if you had a side, that tells us that the 3 sides are congruent. The 3 sides of the triangle are the same. So that tells us what? This part and this part, those are congruent. That's one side. The other side is congruent. And then this side is congruent. They're the same length. And we denote those with the little tick marks. The ones with 1 are congruent. The ones with 2 are congruent. The ones with 3 are congruent. And if all the sides are the same, does that mean the triangle itself is congruent? Which is what this is saying. This whole thing is saying the triangle is congruent or the same as the other triangle. that's probably the next step. But the first thing I wanted to do was just explain what congruency meant and how we can look at a triangle to determine if sides or angles are congruent, and then how we write that out properly. And then once we have that down, we can talk about different examples. Maybe I can do that in the next video, and different examples and what that tells us about the triangle. So hopefully that at least gives you a good foundation.